"You had no right to invade my privacy," she screamed, doubling down. "You think this makes you better than me? Snooping through my accounts, setting me up like some psycho? You're disgusting, Liam." And here I am, standing on the doorstep of a quaint little cafe called Fast Break. It's a modest, unpretentious place tucked away in the corner of the local park, the kind of spot where young couples gather for their first dates. At a table by the window sits my wife, elegant, poised, and heartbreakingly beautiful. Her fingers nervously tap the stem of a wine glass, betraying the tension in her demeanor. She's wearing the red dress I bought her for our anniversary last year. It's almost ironic, isn't it? She looks like the woman I fell in love with so many years ago, radiant, slightly shy, a mirror image of our first dates. But tonight, her nervous glances aren't for me. No, this isn't our date. Technically, it's hers. She just doesn't know I'm here yet. I adjust my baseball cap and dark sunglasses, hoping my disguise is enough to go unnoticed. Beneath the surface, a bubbling anger simmers, but I keep it in check. No mistakes tonight. Everything has led to this moment. The suspicious messages, the late-night calls, and most damning of all, her profile on that damnable dating app. This is it. Game over. I straighten my collar, take a deep breath, and step out of the shadows. Each step toward the cafe feels heavier than the last, but I press on. My heart pounds in my ears, the adrenaline surging with each footfall. When I reach the door, I stop. For just a moment, I allow myself to take in the sight of her. The woman I loved for a decade, the mother of my 2 children. I'd given her everything, and this is how she repays me? The rage threatens to spill over, but I push it back down. Not yet. Not until I have her face to face. With a slow, deliberate motion, I open the door. The small bell overhead jingles as I step inside. The sound catches her attention, and she looks up, her smile faltering the second she sees me. Her face goes pale. "Hi there, sweetheart," I say, my voice dripping with mock cheer as I walk toward the table. "Mind if I join you, Liam?" She stammers, her hand clutching the edge of the table. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeat, pulling out the chair across from her and sitting down. "I should be asking you that, Veronica. You told me you'd be at a coworker's birthday party tonight." I glance around the cafe. Strange venue for a birthday party, don't you think? Her eyes dart around the room, panic setting in. "Liam, it's not what it looks like." "Oh, really?" I interrupt, leaning forward. "So, you're not here waiting for some guy you met on a dating app? A guy you've been sneaking around with for weeks? A guy named James, maybe?" Her jaw drops. For a moment, she is too stunned to speak. That's when I see it. The exact second she realizes the trap she's walked into. "Liam, you don't understand," she begins, her voice rising in pitch. "I wasn't going to do anything. It was just harmless fun. I wasn't going to meet anyone, I swear." "Harmless fun?" I echo bitterly. "Is that what you call lying to your husband and sneaking off behind his back? Is that what you call destroying a marriage, Veronica? Harmless?" She flushes, her anger rising. "This is your fault. You don't pay attention to me anymore. You're always working, or busy with the kids, or..." "Oh no." I cut her off, my voice low but seething. "Don't you dare try to pin this on me. I gave you everything, Veronica. Everything." I lean in closer. "And you repay me by playing the victim?" Her hand slams the table, causing a couple nearby to glance over. "You're so perfect, aren't you? The hero husband who can do no wrong. But you don't even see me anymore, Liam. You don't." "I see you now," I snap, my voice sharp enough to silence her. "I see exactly who you are." For a moment, neither of us speaks. The weight of my words hangs heavy between us, suffocating the air around us. I stand up, pulling a folded envelope from my jacket pocket and tossing it onto the table. "Here, since you're so bored with me, you might as well get what you want." Her trembling hand reaches for the envelope, but she doesn't open it. I didn't wait for her to. I continue coldly. "Divorce papers. Sign them, and you can be free to screw around with as many imaginary men as you want. But you're not taking the house, and you're not taking the kids. You're done, Veronica." Her face crumples, her defiance melting into panic. "Liam, please don't do this. We can fix this. I made a mistake." "Okay, I'll I don't wait for the rest. Turning on my heel, I leave the cafe. The bell jingles behind me as I step out into the night. Outside, I inhale deeply, the cold air filling my lungs. My hands are shaking, but for the first time in what feels like forever, I feel lighter. Like I've finally broken free of the lie I've been living in. As I walk away, my mind races with what comes next. Lawyers, custody arrangements, breaking the news to the kids. It's going to be hell, but at least it will be an honest hell. Looking back, I can't pinpoint the exact moment everything started to fall apart. Maybe it wasn't one single moment, but 1,000 little ones slowly eroding us, bit by bit. Veronica and I met when we were both in our 20s. She was the kind of woman who lit up a room just by walking into it. Funny, smart, beautiful. She had this energy about her, an energy that seemed to light up everything around her, like she could conquer the world and still make you feel like you were the only person who mattered. I was just a regular guy, steady job, a rusty truck, and dreams I hadn't figured out how to chase yet. But for some reason, she chose me. Or maybe it wasn't so much that she chose me, but rather the idea of me. Back then, I could be anyone she wanted me to be, the man who fit her vision of a perfect partner. Her family, however, didn't see it that way. Her mother, Carol, was the worst. From the very start, she made it abundantly clear that she thought I was beneath Veronica. She'd drop little, biting remarks like, "Oh, Liam, it's so sweet how you're trying to better yourself." Or, Veronica could have married someone who really matched her ambition. Her father wasn't much better. He was the quiet type, the kind of man whose disapproval didn't need to be voiced. His glances said it all. I could always feel the disdain when I spoke about my job, the way his eyes would narrow. "You're not a real man," Carol told me once during a particularly heated Thanksgiving dinner. "Real men take care of their families. They provide. They make their wives feel special." I bit my tongue that day, for Veronica's sake, but her silence in that moment was deafening. Veronica didn't defend me. Not then, not ever. At the time, I convinced myself that it didn't matter. I wasn't marrying her family, after all. But as the years went on, those words, those subtle judgments, crept into our arguments. They started to take root, like seeds finding cracks in the foundation of our marriage. Whenever we fought, it always came back to the same things. "You don't pay attention to me," she'd say, her voice sharp like a blade. "You don't listen. You don't see me." I'd try to argue, to explain that I was doing my best, but it was never enough. "You're just like my mother said," she spat at me once in the heat of a particularly bad fight. "You don't even try to make me happy. You think this," she waved her hand around, gesturing to the house, the kids, the life we'd built together, "is enough? It's not." And then there was the bedroom. That, too, had become a battlefield. It's not like we never had sex, of course we did, but over time it became different. At first, I chalked it up to the natural rhythms of life. Work stress, the kids, the exhaustion of trying to keep a household running. But then the comments started. "Do you even care if I enjoy it?" she'd ask after a particularly rushed encounter. "Do you even notice me anymore?" It wasn't that I didn't care, I did. But by then, I'd started to pull away, retreating into myself to avoid the constant accusations, the never-ending sense of failure. I started to feel like I couldn't win. If I tried harder, it wasn't enough. If I gave up trying, it was my fault for not fighting for us. But maybe the worst part wasn't the fighting. It was the silence that followed. Veronica had a way of shutting me out that was even more painful than her words. She'd go days without really speaking to me, her answers short and clipped. She'd busy herself with the kids or work, leaving me to stew in the guilt and anger she'd planted in my chest. And me? I wasn't blameless either. I stopped trying to fix things. I stopped noticing when she was upset, stopped asking about her day, stopped giving her the version of me she probably needed. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that all couples go through it. But rough patches don't last for years, do they? Looking back now, I wonder if I was blind or just too stubborn. Maybe both. The truth is, I let her family's words sink in. I let them plant seeds of doubt in my mind. I doubted myself, and I doubted us. I stopped fighting for her because I started to believe she didn't want me to. And maybe, deep down, she didn't. By the time Brian sent me the message, the The cracks in our marriage had turned into full-fledged canyons. But even then, I didn't want to believe it. It was late one evening when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, but when I saw Brian's name, something made me open it. The message was short, a screenshot of a dating profile. "Dude, isn't this your wife?" I stared at the image for a long time, my mind refusing to connect the dots. It wasn't possible. There had to be some sort of mistake. Someone had to be using her photo, maybe a scam or something. I even laughed it off, telling Brian it couldn't possibly be her. But then I opened the screenshot again. The picture was unmistakably Veronica. It wasn't just any random selfie, either. It was one I'd taken of her at the beach last summer. She'd been laughing, caught off guard, her hair tousled by the wind. And then I saw the bio. Her favorite wine, her love of piano music, her claim to want deep, meaningful conversations. It was unmistakably her. I wanted to confront her immediately, to demand answers. But something held me back. Perhaps it was denial, or perhaps it was the old voice from my army days. Eyes up, ears open. Trust what you see, not what you think. If this was real, I needed to be sure. That's when James came into the picture. At first, I hesitated. It felt wrong, like I was crossing some invisible line. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I had no other choice. If I accused her without proof, she'd deny everything. But if she was innocent, I needed to know that too. Creating the fake profile was easy. I found a picture of a guy online, a fitness trainer with just the right mix of charm and good looks. I crafted a bio that was perfectly tailored to Veronica's old likes. Hiking, dogs, sunsets, cheesy romance movies. All the things she used to swoon over when we were younger. 2 days later, we matched. That was when the knot in my stomach tightened into something far worse. I was the first to message her. "Hey, you've got great taste in wine. Any recommendations?" She replied in less than an hour. Her tone was playful, warm, almost too familiar. She was cautious at first, but it didn't take long for her to open up. She started telling James about her life, her frustrations, her desire to feel seen. At first, I tried to distance myself, to keep it professional, to see it as just an experiment. But the more we talked, the harder it became to remain detached. She told James things she hadn't told me in years. She laughed in her messages, used emojis, even shared inside jokes we'd once had as a couple. And the strangest part? I didn't have to try very hard. I didn't have to make up elaborate stories or pretend to be someone I wasn't. I just used my own words, my own sense of humor. The only thing I did differently was give her attention. The kind of attention I hadn't given her in a long time. It hit me like a punch to the gut. This was what she wanted, what she had been craving, and I had stopped giving it to her. But none of that made what she was doing okay. I began to notice her patterns before I started messaging James. She'd hide her phone, leave the room, or suddenly excuse herself to check emails or finish some work. Sometimes, she'd sit on the couch, giggling quietly at her screen, completely oblivious to me sitting just feet away. It was like watching a stranger, but I stayed patient. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I waited for her to trust James enough to agree to meet in person. It wasn't easy. She hesitated at first, saying it was complicated, that she didn't want to hurt anyone. But after a week of back and forth messages, she finally agreed. "I can meet next week," she said. "There's a coworker's birthday party I can use as an excuse." That night, she told me about the party as casually as if she were telling me to pick up milk on my way home. I nodded, playing along, though my stomach was twisted with nerves. She didn't realize it, but the meeting she had agreed to wasn't with James. It was with me. My plan was simple, requiring no complicated technology. All I had to do was wait for my wife to show up at the cafe, catch her red-handed, and deliver the truth she so desperately wanted to avoid. I prepared the divorce papers in advance, tucked neatly into an envelope that she couldn't ignore. But that wasn't all. In those late nights, spent piecing everything together, I'd uncovered more than just her little chats with James. My friends from my previous job, a few tech-savvy guys who owed me some favors, helped me access her private account on the app. What I found was worse than I imagined. She wasn't just talking to James. There were others. Messages full of flirtations, promises, and suggestions to meet up. Nothing explicit, but the intent was clear. She wanted the attention. She craved it. And she didn't care where it came from. Armed with screenshots, timestamps, and chat logs, I had everything I needed, not just for the confrontation, but for the courtroom if it came to that. The next day, on Thursday morning, I went to court to file the divorce papers. My lawyer had been on standby for weeks, waiting for me to give the green light. It felt surreal standing in that sterile office, signing the papers that would formally end a decade of marriage. But it had to be done. By the time I returned to my office that afternoon, everything was in place. The papers were finalized, the evidence was organized, and the plan for that evening was clear. This wasn't just about catching her in the act. It was about taking back control. It was about showing her and myself that I wasn't the passive, clueless man she thought I was. As you already know, she was there when I arrived, sitting at that cafe table in the red dress I'd bought her, glancing at the door with that mix of excitement and nerves that used to be reserved for me. My actions had been planned down to the last detail, and everything unfolded exactly as I intended. The envelope with the divorce papers landed on the table. Her defenses crumbled, and I left that cafe knowing she could no longer deny the truth. I walked out into the cold night with a strange sense of clarity. For the first time in years, I felt like I had regained my dignity, like I wasn't just reacting to her betrayal, but finally standing up for myself. But here's the thing about plans. They rarely unfold as you expect. While I had prepared myself for her tears, her excuses, and even her anger, I hadn't anticipated the storm she would unleash after that night. I thought I had walked out of that cafe victorious, with the kind of clarity and closure I hadn't felt in years. But the moment I stepped into my house later that night, I realized I had underestimated Veronica. She was waiting for me. I hadn't expected her to come straight home, not after everything that had happened. I thought she would need time to process, to stew in the mess she had created. Instead, there she was, pacing the living room, her face streaked with mascara and filled with rage. The moment I opened the door, the accusations began. "How dare you humiliate me like that?" she screamed, her voice trembling. "You set me up, Liam. You planned this whole thing." I closed the door slowly behind me, letting her words bounce off me. I didn't respond, not yet. "You think you're so clever," she spat, crossing her arms as though she were the wrong party. "But you're just a coward, sneaking around, spying on me, making me feel like I'm the villain in all this." I dropped my jacket onto the back of a chair and met her glare directly. "Aren't you?" I asked calmly, my voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. That silenced her, at least for a moment. But Veronica wasn't the type to stay quiet for long. She switched tactics, her tone shifting from anger to desperation. "You don't understand, Liam. I wasn't going to do anything. I was lonely, okay? You haven't exactly been there for me lately." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. "Lonely? Is that what we're calling it now? Flirting with strangers? Lying to your husband? Sneaking around? If you were so lonely, maybe you should have talked to me instead of chatting up half the internet." She flinched, but she didn't back down. "You don't get it," she hissed. "You've been so wrapped up in your job, in the kids, in everything else that you stopped paying attention to me. I needed to feel wanted, seen." Her words stung more than I cared to admit, but I wasn't about to let her guilt trip me into forgetting everything she had done. "So this is my fault?" I shot back, my voice rising for the first time. "I worked my ass off to give you the life you wanted. A nice house, stability, everything your family said I couldn't give you. And this is how you repay me? By throwing it all away because you wanted attention?" Her face twisted in frustration as she started pacing again. "You're twisting my words. You don't even care why I did it, do you? All you care about is being right." "I care about the truth," I said sharply. "I care about the fact that while I was busy building a life for us, you were tearing it apart piece by piece. And don't even try to tell me it was just harmless fun." I saw the chats, Veronica. All of them. Her eyes widened in shock. What? What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb," I snapped. "You think James was the only one I found? You've been doing this for months, talking to God knows how many guys, leading them on like it's some kind of game. But it wasn't a game, Veronica. It was our marriage." She looked as though I had slapped her. For the first time, I saw something crack behind the mask of anger and defiance she wore so well. But it didn't last. "You had no right to invade my privacy," she screamed, doubling down. You think this makes you better than me? Snooping through my accounts, setting me up like some psycho? You're disgusting, Liam. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. You're unbelievable. You betray me. You lie to me. And now you're trying to make me the bad guy. I guess your mother was right about one thing. I said before I could stop myself. You're good at playing the victim. Her eyes flashed with fury. Don't you dare bring my mother into this. Oh, I'm bringing her into this? I said, the words tumbling out of me. Because she's been whispering this crap into your ear for years, making you think I'm not good enough, that I don't deserve you. And now you've turned into her. Congratulations. She froze, her chest heaving, her face a mix of rage and something else. Something almost like regret. For a moment, I thought I had finally broken through to her. But then she stormed past me, grabbing her purse off the counter. You think you're so perfect, Liam, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. Well, guess what? You're not. You've been checked out of this marriage for years. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. And with that, she was gone. The door slammed behind her, leaving me standing amidst the wreckage of our argument. But the storm didn't end there. Over the next few days, Veronica turned up the heat, calling me every name under the sun and threatening to drag me through hell in the divorce. She even began playing the victim card with our friends and family, twisting the narrative to make me seem like the villain. I can't believe Liam would spy on me like that, she said to one of her friends, loud enough for me to hear. It's so controlling. He doesn't even care why I was unhappy. It felt like living with a stranger determined to make my life as miserable as possible. But I held my ground. I wasn't about to let her rewrite the truth. The truth was simple. I had spent years fighting for us, and she had thrown it all away. Now, it was my turn to fight for me. The days following Veronica's departure felt like being in the eye of a hurricane. Everything was eerily quiet, but I knew it wasn't over. There were phone calls from her, angry, desperate, sometimes incoherent. There were texts, one after another, filled with accusations and apologies, as though she couldn't decide which version of herself she wanted to present. But I didn't respond. I focused on what I could control, the divorce, the kids, and rebuilding whatever was left of my life. It wasn't easy. Every corner of the house reminded me of her, of us. The kitchen where we used to laugh over burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings. The couch where we used to cuddle after the kids went to bed. Even the damn piano in the living room, a gift I'd saved up for one Christmas because I knew how much she loved music. Now all of it felt hollow. The hardest part was telling the kids. Emil and Clara didn't understand at first. How could they? I kept it simple, telling them that Mom and Dad had decided to live in separate houses, but that we both loved them very much. Emil, being older, asked the harder questions. Did you and Mom fight? Is it my fault? I promised him it wasn't. I promised both of them that they would never have to choose between us, even though I wasn't sure Veronica would honor that promise. The first court hearing came faster than I expected. Veronica showed up with her lawyer, wearing a calm, collected mask that almost fooled me. Almost. I knew her too well to fall for the act. She tried to fight for the house, citing her contributions to the mortgage, but my lawyer had the evidence ready. The chats, the deceit. It was all laid out in cold, irrefutable detail. It wasn't just about infidelity. It was about trust, or rather the complete lack of it. The judge saw through her story. When the ruling came down, I kept my composure. The house and primary custody of the kids were mine. Veronica was granted visitation, but it was clear, even to the court, where the stability lay. She didn't take it well. You've ruined my life, Liam, she told me outside the courthouse, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and tears. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, life began to feel livable again. The kids adjusted faster than I thought they would. Emil joined the soccer team at school, and Clara took up drawing. They seemed happier, freer somehow, without the tension that had hung over the house like a storm cloud for so long. And me? I found clarity in the quiet moments. Sitting in the backyard on a cool evening, watching the stars, I thought about everything that had happened. About the man I used to be and the man I was now. I wasn't perfect. Veronica was right about that. There were things I'd failed at, ways I'd let her down, even if it didn't excuse what she had done. But I had also given her more than she ever acknowledged, and I wasn't going to carry the weight of her choices any longer. One night, while cleaning out the closet, I found an old box of mementos from our early days. Photos, love letters, little trinkets from trips we had taken together. I almost threw it all away, but stopped myself. Instead, I put the box in the attic, out of sight but not entirely out of mind. It wasn't that I wanted to hold on to her, but I didn't want to erase her either. She was part of my life, part of my story. Denying that wouldn't make the pain disappear. Closure didn't come in a single moment. It came in pieces. Tiny victories like cooking dinner without burning it, laughing with the kids over something silly, or waking up one day and realizing I hadn't thought about her in hours. Eventually, I realized that losing Veronica wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new one where I wasn't constantly trying to measure up to someone else's expectations. One where I could finally be me, the man I had forgotten how to be. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough.